It's 26,000 years ago, and you are not at the top of the food chain. The ground is frozen solid beneath your feet. Your breath turns to ice in your beard before it leaves your mouth. You've crossed a land bridge that no longer exists. You've survived the wolves. You've survived the cold that kills in minutes. You carry a spear tipped with stone, and for the first time in a long time, you let yourself believe that nothing out here is bigger than you. Then the wind shifts, and something moves in the white ahead. It doesn't run. It doesn't flinch. It rises, onto its hind legs, up past the height of one man. Then two. It blots out the gray sky, and in that moment, you understand something your ancestors learned the hard way. On this continent, you are the smaller animal. This is Arctodus simus, the giant short-faced bear, the largest land predator of Ice Age North America. It weighed as much as a small car. It stood taller than a basketball hoop, and for tens of thousands of years, it may have been the single reason the first humans struggled to move into an entire continent. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how big this animal really was, how it hunted, why scientists think it terrorized the earliest Americans, and what finally brought a 2,000-pound monster to its knees. Stay to the end, because the way this creature died is even stranger than the way it lived. Let's start with the number in the title. A large male Arctodus simus weighed close to 2,000 pounds. On all fours, its back was level with a grown man's shoulders. Standing upright, it reached as high as 11, maybe 12 feet, tall enough to look over the roof of a house. But raw weight isn't what made it terrifying. It was the shape. Where a modern grizzly is built low and heavy, the short-faced bear was built like an athlete. Its legs were long and straight, made for covering ground. Its chest was narrow. Its snout was short and broad, which is where the name comes from, giving it a face that looked less like a bear and more like a giant, flat-faced predator. Those long legs have started one of the biggest arguments in paleontology. Some scientists believe this bear could run down prey across open ground at speeds no animal that size should be able to reach. Others think the legs were built for endurance, for covering enormous distances in search of food. Either way, the picture is the same: a predator the size of a car that could move like something half its weight. In the open, frozen plains of Ice Age America, there was almost nowhere to hide from it. So what did a 2,000-pound bear eat? Almost anything it wanted. Chemical analysis of Arctodus bones tells us this was one of the most meat-heavy bears that ever lived. It shared its world with Ice Age giants, bison, wild horses, camels, and the young of mammoths and mastodons, and it had the size to take them on. But here's the detail that changes everything. A predator this large may not have done most of its own killing. Picture a pack of dire wolves that has just brought down a horse, or a saber-toothed cat standing over a fresh kill. Then imagine this: 12 feet of muscle, walking straight toward them out of the snow. Nothing on that landscape was going to argue. The short-faced bear may have ruled the Ice Age, not just by hunting, but by stealing, using its sheer size to muscle every other predator off their food. That makes it something worse than a hunter. It makes it a tyrant, an animal that ate whatever it wanted, whenever it wanted, and answered to nothing. Until something new walked out of the north. Around 15 to 20,000 years ago, the first humans began pushing into North America. They were skilled, they were organized, they had already survived the harshest environments on Earth. And they may have walked straight into the territory of the most dangerous land predator on the planet. There's a theory, and it's a serious one, that the giant short-faced bear helped keep humans out of the Americas for far longer than it should have taken us to arrive. The idea goes like this: a predator this large, this aggressive, and this willing to take food by force would have made the open plains a death sentence for small human groups. Every carcass you tried to scavenge, every animal you tried to hunt, you risked meeting him at it. Think back to where we started. You've got a stone spear and a handful of companions. Your weapon might stop a wolf. It might even stop a big cat. But against 2,000 pounds of bear that doesn't feel fear and doesn't back down from a kill, a spear is barely an inconvenience. For the first Americans, this bear wasn't just another animal on the landscape. It may have been the gatekeeper of an entire continent, and for thousands of years, it won. So how do you kill a monster that fears nothing? You take away its food. Around 11 to 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age began to end. The great ice sheets retreated, the climate swung, and the enormous herds of Ice Age herbivores, the bison, the horses, the camels the short-faced bear depended on, began to collapse. This is the cruel irony of being the biggest predator alive. Size is a weapon when food is everywhere. When food disappears, size becomes a curse. A 2,000-pound body needs an enormous amount of meat just to survive. As the giant herds vanished, the giant bear had nothing left to steal and nothing left to hunt. At the same time, human hunters were spreading across the continent, better armed, better organized, and competing for the very same prey. Squeezed between a warming world and a rising species, the largest land predator in North American history simply ran out of Ice Age. By around 11,000 years ago, Arctodus simus was gone. The gatekeeper had fallen, and the continent it had guarded for so long finally belonged to us. We like to tell ourselves that humans were always the hunters, that we conquered every land we touched. But for a long, cold chapter of our history, that simply wasn't true. There was a time when we crossed into a new world and found a monster already waiting, one that stood 12 feet tall, feared nothing, and treated our ancestors as prey. Arctodus simus ruled a frozen kingdom that no longer exists. But its bones are still out there, locked in the ice and the tar, reminding us that we were not always the top of the food chain. This is Frozen Giants. If you want to meet the next monster that ruled the Ice Age, the cat that hunted these same plains, that video is on screen right now. I'll see you in the ice.